I say facts, but the points made by Donald Trump of thousands of deaths. Certainly, from what I've seen, literally no evidence to support allegations of that magnitude, of that kind. But it's something we've heard from Donald Trump. We've heard it from Elon Musk, who was a white South African so close to Donald Trump, and it now bears the stamp of the Trump administration. We're going to hear now more on this in just a moment, and no doubt from you on this and other things in the morning. Kate McCann, looking forward to your take on all of this. Let's just go back now to the White House. Just keep tabs on what is going on there.
That's Air Force One. It's being built. 2 of them being built. But Boeing's a little bit late, unfortunately. So why did they give us a plane to the United States Air Force? That's what that idiot talks about after viewing a thing where thousands of people are dead.
I'm sorry, I don't have a plane to give you.
I wish you did. I take it. I would take it. If your country offered the United States Air Force a plane, I would take it.
Okay. But coming back to this issue, which I really would like us to talk about, and talk about it very calmly. We were taught by Nelson Mandela that whenever there are problems, people need to sit down around a table and talk about them.
Well, there are problems.
And this is precisely what we would also like to talk about, including, of course, trade matters, investment matters. So the issues that concern you as the United States.
Those are all those are all deaths.
Yeah, in many ways, I mean, one should say you are a partner of South Africa, and you are raising concerns, and these are concerns that we are willing to talk to you about. Let me just add quickly, you know, the criminality that we are experiencing in our country needs quite a lot of technological capability. And in one of our areas in South Africa, we're using US technology, which is able to, in many ways, identify where shootings are happening and all that. And I'd like to talk about that because there is support that we can get from you and the United States to help us deal with all these acts of criminality. And that is what I believe partnership is all about. And we are here as a partner so that we can help each other whenever there are challenges. So I'd like us to discuss it, and of course outside of the media, so that we sit down and have a really good discussion that will lead to good outcomes.
Are there any other punitive measures that could be in place should you not be satisfied that South Africa is fixing some of the very bad things in the comments that you tweeted are happening?
Well, there are a lot of bad things happening in many countries, but this in particular has been very, very bad, and because of we're going to have the whole world watching in another short period of time because you have the G20, and that's a big deal. And it seems like, I mean, I want you to look good. I don't want you to look bad.
Very good.
But we have hundreds of people, thousands of people trying to come into our country because they feel they're going to be killed and their land is going to be confiscated. And you do have laws that were passed that gives you the right to confiscate land for no payment. You can take away land for no payment.
I want to clarify that because we have a constitution. Our constitution guarantees and protects the sanctity of tenure of land ownership. And that constitution protects all South Africans with regard to land ownership. However, we do say, because we've got to deal with the past, the government, and as your government also has the right to expropriate land for public use.
And you're doing that.
And we've never really gotten underway with that. And we are going to be doing so.
You're taking people's land away
we have not.
From them. And those people, in many cases, are being executed. Yeah. They're being executed. And they happen to be white, and most of them happen to be farmers. Mm-hmm. And that's a tough situation. I don't know how you explain that. How do you explain that? They're taking people's land away, and in many cases, those people are being executed, and in many cases, it's not the government that's doing it. It's people that kill them and then take their land, and nothing happens to them. But we have thousands of people that want to come into our country. They're also going to Australia in a smaller number. Mm-hmm. But we have thousands of people that want to come into our country, and they're white farmers, and they feel that they're going to die in South Africa, and it's a bad thing. Yeah, please.
What can South Africa do? What concessions would you like to see them make to improve relations with the United States? Then I have one more for President Ramaphosa afterwards.
Well, you know, we just spoke about, I got them a very, very complex machine, 150 of them. I was asked by the president if he could help, and I did that. And, you know, I have great feeling for all countries. I deal with all countries, but I have a great feeling for South Africa because I have friends. I have a couple of friends, a few friends here today. I have many friends from South Africa, but many of those friends are not, they can't go back. I have, Elon is from South Africa. I don't want to get Elon involved. That's all I have to do, get him into another thing. But Elon happens to be from South Africa. This is what Elon wanted. He actually came here on a different subject, sending rockets to Mars, okay? Yes. He likes that better. He likes that subject better. That's right. But Elon is from South Africa, and I don't want to talk to him about that. I don't think it's fair to him.
That's right.
But I will say that people are fleeing South Africa for their own safety. Their land is being confiscated, and in many cases they're being killed. And that scene of, you see how many crosses they have. Those crosses, that's a dead person in every one of them. And those trucks or cars are paying their respects to all of those dead people on a Sunday morning. That's a rough thing to explain away. And the problem we have, and the way, you know, a correct and a fair media exposes things. But we have a very corrupt media. They won't even report this. If this were the other way around, it would be the biggest story. Now, I will say apartheid, terrible. That was the biggest story. That was reported all the time. And this is sort of the opposite of apartheid. What's happening now is never reported. Nobody knows about it. All we know is we're being inundated with people, with white farmers from South Africa. And it's a big problem. Marco Rubio was telling me he's never seen anything like it. The numbers of people that want to leave South Africa because they feel they're going to be dead very soon. Yes, please.
I was going to say,
Brian, go.
If I could just ask you a question. 72%.
Okay, we're going to pull away now from that live feed of events in the Oval Office at the White House. We'll go back to that presently. It began as small talk about golf, and it's now developed into a diplomatic conflagration at the presidential level. The two leaders, Cyril Ramaphosa sitting side by side with his host Donald Trump by that White House fireside. Between the two of them, I guess you could describe it as low pitch but high intensity, with Donald Trump now flinging out repeatedly accusations of mass killings, genocide against whites in South Africa, white farmers and white farming families. Cyril Ramaphosa seeking to rebut every claim that's thrown his way. Journalists, I nearly said, scarcely able to believe what they're saying, but I think that would not be the case. This is almost a familiar getting on for a routine spectacle in the diplomacy of presidential diplomacy of the White House. Still, against any normal standards, it is truly, truly remarkable. Here with me, watching all of that on Pienaar and Friends, we got Fergie and Mikey. We got Kate Ferguson from the Sun on Sunday and Mikey Smith from the Mirror. What are you thinking, Kate?
I mean, it's astonishing scenes, isn't it? I was just thinking that in normal circumstances, an invite to see the president in the Oval Office would be this sort of sought-after invite. But nowadays, it's like entering the lion's den, isn't it? You don't know which way it's going to go. Are you going to be able to charm this president, or is he going to ambush you, as has happened today? It's totally astonishing if you think about it. Wheeling out a television, showing them these images.
Really a calculated ambush.
Totally orchestrated, there to present him with an argument and to kind of challenge him over it. And obviously totally caught like a cat in the headlights, a rabbit in the headlights, doesn't know what to do, can barely get a word in edgeways, it seems. Yeah,
and Mikey, the president, well, throwing those accusations, mass killing in South Africa of white farmers, thousands of deaths, he's suggesting. Look, if there are any facts, we're going to hear from Tim Marshall in a second, who I can think give us something of a reality check on all of this, and that I think is going to be valuable to us. But if there is any evidence to support anything of that kind, I've got to say that I'm completely unaware of it. The president lashing out as he has occasionally wants to do, as a journalist there in the Oval Office. And maybe it's worth mentioning that Cyril Ramaphosa was leader of the country, South Africa, who has very much got on the wrong side of the United States administration for any number of reasons. What are your thoughts?
So I think it's really important to note that almost nothing Donald Trump has said in what we've been listening to is true. The idea that farmers are having their land seized is not true. What is happening is they passed a law in January, which is basically the equivalent of compulsory purchase. There is a clause in it where if land isn't being used and there's no plan to develop it, it can be taken without compensation. Sure, that is true. But in most cases, the vast majority of cases, there would be just and fair compensation for any land that is seized by the government. Every country more or less has something like that. America has it. They call it eminent domain. So that's point one, that's nonsense. Point two, the idea that white farmers are being, killed for their land or killed as well as having their land taken off them. There is a situation, as I understand it, where farmers writ large are, there is violence against farmers. There is not specifically violence against white farmers. Statistically, it's no more likely, as I understand it, by comparison to the population, that if you're a white farmer, you're going to be murdered. That video they rolled out, as I understand it, with the crosses at the side of the road, that was presented as being the white farmers who have been killed. It's not. It's the deaths of all farmers over quite a long period of time. So all of this that he's presenting in the Oval Office is, broadly speaking, nonsense. It's social media misleading, at the very least, content, if not active disinformation. And the best anyone can work out of how this came across Trump's desk, you might think it came from Elon Musk. I'm sure he hasn't helped, but as I understand it, a fairly prominent pressure group of white South Africans went on Fox News during Trump's first presidency and went on the Tucker Carlson show, which Trump watches all the time, and he saw it there, and it's snowballed from there.
Right. It's interesting, so good to get your take too, Mikey. Now I want to invite warmly to the programme Tim Marshall, the foreign correspondent and writer, who can welcome to you, Tim. You can give us just some I'm sure really valuable context and fact-based context to what we've been watching, these extraordinary scenes, as well as your own reaction. Tell me, what are you thinking right now, Tim? Welcome.
Thank you, John. I was, idly keeping one eye on it and one of the screens on my desk, and it was all very routine. And I noted that Ramaphosa was smart and was thanking Trump for the help Trump gave South Africa during the COVID pandemic. And I thought, he's learnt you flatter the guy. And if anybody doubts that the Zelensky incident was not completely stage managed by the White House, I think the scale should fall from their eyes in this, because Trump pushed in reasonably gently on this idea of the white farmers being killed and the law that's just been mentioned being racist. Ramaphosa pushed back gently on it, at which point Trump said, okay, well, let's dim the lights. And these pre-positioned screens suddenly showed the videos. What they showed was Julius Malema. Now, if you follow politics in South Africa, Julius Malema is a bigot. He is probably a racist. He leads the economic freedom fighters. And he has, on several occasions, led whole stadiums in the chants of Dubul Imhuna, which basically means kill the Boer. The Boer being the white South Africans. Boer is actually an old Dutch word meaning farmer. So Malema knows what he's doing. But to take Malema, who is not in the government, who is considered a radical, and use him is equivalent to Ramaphosa holding a press conference in South Africa with Trump there, and him suddenly showing videos of the Ku Klux Klan plan as if it represented the American government. So that's a bit of a non-starter. The second thing, that the law's already been mentioned, and yes, all governments have similar laws allowing property exploitation. So that's not. So let's go to the kernel of this, the heart of it. Are white South African farmers being targeted and killed? Occasionally, yes. Is it as government policy? Absolutely not. Is it endemic? No. About 50 farmers are killed every year in South Africa. But remember, South Africa's murder rate easily tops the 20, maybe even 30,000 a year. And it's pretty obvious that farmers will be amongst them, including black farmers. And the last thing I noticed on the video, showing all these thousands of white crosses on a hillside. The one thing that did trouble me was that Ramaphosa said, where's that? I'm not familiar with that. Is that in South Africa? That struck me as odd, given that it's a cause célèbre in South Africa. It's on the N1 road route. It's up on a hillside. There's about 3,000 crosses to symbolise what one side of this argument claims is this genocide against white farmers. But the crosses, the 3,000 white metal crosses, have been planted there between now and round about 2000. So we're talking a quarter of a century. So sorry for such a long answer, but I thought the context of all that, I mean, for me, the meaning of this is both the proof that Trump is still going to say anything he wants, knowing it will be believed by certain sections. But secondly, the Zelensky thing, I mean, I think we now know that this is a tactic they are prepared to use whenever they want.
Right, Sam, as always, really, really grateful for your context and perspective and just the injection of facts, which at a time like this, you really can't put too higher value on it. That's certainly the way we feel, I think, here in the studio, and I'm sure our listeners feel exactly the same way. I don't know if you can stay with us. In a moment, I'm going to be talking to Nick Thomas Simmons, the Cabinet Minister, who I don't believe has had the pleasure, and pleasure not being the word, of witnessing what we've been watching in the Oval Office live. But I do want to get his thoughts on some of the big stories here today that we've been covering. The Prime Minister's U-turn on the winter fuel allowance, chief among those. You are listening to Pienaar. I'm John Pienaar and friends, here with Mikey Smith and Kate Ferguson from The Sun on Sunday. We're here in association with NatWest Cushion, making workplace pensions and savings easy. Search NatWest.
On the latest politics, business and sports news of the day.
Pienaar Friends on Times Radio with NatWest Cushion, making workplace pensions and savings easy. Search NatWest Cushion to find out more.
This is Pienaar Friends. I'm John Pienaar, Mikey Smith from the Mirror and Kate Ferguson from The Sun on Sunday. And we're joined now live on the line by Cabinet Minister Nick Thomas Simmons. Hello to you, Nick.
Hello, John. Good to be on your show as always.
Thank you for joining us. It wouldn't be fair to ask you about what we've been watching in the White House, because I know you haven't been able to watch all of that, except maybe to observe when you go into the White House to meet President Trump. It's as well to be prepared for absolutely anything.
Well, listen, I've just been on a visit to Marks and Spencer out in Stratford to look at products like British sausages that we will once again be able to export to the European Union as a consequence of the deal that the government secured on Monday.
Yeah.
But look, in relation to with the United States, we have a special relationship with the United States. We work very, very closely with the United States administration. That is what is in our national interest, and that's what we'll continue to do.
All right, I'm going to move on because we have a story on our hands from today. The Prime Minister's screeching U-turn, as I described it earlier on, when he told us he was going to backtrack away from the removal, as it was planned, of winter fuel allowances from pensioners. Now, it's going to change. It's not going to be taken away from anything like the same amount of people. We don't know what it's going to look like after the Treasury and the Chancellor have gone through it all and looked at changes. But we do know, Nick, that the policy, well, which was pretty ill thought through, hastily put together, that is being changed. And I guess that's something, isn't it?
Well, look, we inherited a situation last July. There was a £22 billion black hole in our public finances, and we inherited a situation too that had public services on their knees. So we had to take a number of very difficult decisions, of which the means testing of winter fuel was one. And look, we put in place things like additional support through the Household Support Fund. We also ensured that pensioners with pension credit, obviously the poorest, were still able to claim it. But here we are now, 10 months later. We've just, in the last 3 weeks, secured 3 trade deals, one with India, one with the United States, one with the EU. And what the Prime Minister is saying, yes, we had to take those tough decisions when we came to office. But now we can see that vote of confidence in the British economy. We are looking, yes, to increase the number of pensioners who will be eligible for it. But I'm sure we can all still agree, as we did last summer, that paying the winter fuel allowance to millionaires is not a good use of public money, but certainly we would be looking to increase the threshold, and as the Prime Minister said, it'll be at the next fiscal event.
Yeah, no dispute that that your government inherited a really, really difficult financial and fiscal situation, and you needed to take decisions, including, in this case, really, really bad decisions. This cannot be described as being well thought through. And I'm hearing now, I was talking to Tom Baldwin, who you'll know very well earlier on. He was telling me that at the top of government, it's pretty much universally agreed this was a bad idea, hastily put together.
Well, look, I think the idea of the winter fuel allowance not being universal, not being paid, as I say, to millionaires, we can all accept that is sensible. Look, in terms of discussions in Number 10, I'm sure you'll understand, John, given the very intense work I've been doing on negotiations in recent weeks. I obviously haven't been a part of those discussions. Yeah. But, what the Prime Minister is saying today is that, of course, we stick into the principle of means testing, but we are looking at...
Okay, we're a slightly rough line there to Nick Thomas. I don't know if we've still got Nick with us. We got you back there, Nick. You were telling us you're looking at where you go from here. Look, fair, I'm guessing. Is it fair to take it that you are one of those who are really relieved that this decision has been taken? It's got to be refined. And just by the way, just in passing, hearing earlier on that there's a strong view at the top of government, as it were, that there needs to be another U-turn on the matter of the benefit cap for those with more than 2 children. Is that something you'd welcome, Nick?
Well, I'm not sure, because the line is a bit crackly, John. You heard my previous answer when I said that, look, in terms of discussions that have happened in Number 10 in recent weeks, I'm sure you'd forgive me when I say that I've been taking part in very intense negotiations with the EU, so obviously I haven't been a part of those discussions. Yeah. But in terms of where we are on, let me just take the winter fuel example just for a minute. With the winter fuel, I don't think anyone is disputing the principle of means testing. The issue is where you draw the line. And what we are saying is we will increase the number of pensioners that are eligible. I think you're asking me a wider question. I think I caught it about welfare reform more generally. Yeah. And obviously, with welfare reform, again, nobody is saying, to my knowledge anyway, that the current system that we have of our welfare state is actually working. There is a moral imperative to reform it. We have 1 in 8 young people at the moment who are going from school and are not going into further education, they're not going into employment, they're not going into training. So there's a real strong moral imperative to reform our welfare system, and that is the agenda the government is taking forward.
Yeah, and again, it's difficult to dispute any of that. On the politics of all of this, you'll be hoping, I know it's not directly your portfolio, but you'll be hoping that the changes announced today, and presumably that those to come, will retrieve some of the Labour Party's damaged standing and credibility. Look at the opinion polls. Look at those local election results. There's some dispute about whether that's going to be possible. You will be hoping that this will be something of a political repair job too, Nick, won't you?
Government is also about listening, John, and that is what the government is doing. We are listening to what is being said, but it is also about the financial headroom, the fiscal headroom that the government has available. And the reality is we were in an appalling situation last July, August with what we inherited. But those tough decisions are making a difference. Confidence in the UK economy is why we've been able to secure those 3 trade deals in recent weeks. And when you do have confidence in the UK economy, when you have investment, when you have, as I have seen today, businesses with now increased opportunities to grow as a consequence of decisions we've taken, that does give you more fiscal headroom. And as the Prime Minister indicated today, that is going to allow us to increase the number of pensioners eligible for the winter fuel payment.
All right, Nick Thomas, it was really good to talk to you as always, Nick. Thanks for joining us.
John.
Okay, so here with me, Kate Ferguson and Mikey Smith. What are you thinking about that? Okay.
Well, it was such a screeching U-turn, this winter fuel U-turn. You could smell the burning rubber in PMQs as he announced it. I mean, we knew this was coming. It was starting to be trailed the tail end of last week. By the time we hit the presses at the Sun on Sunday, it was very clear. I think I wrote it was expected within weeks. Should have gone stronger. I should have said days. But they had to dump this policy. And Nick Thomas Simmons, I'm afraid, I think is telling us a little fib there, because it's nothing to do with the trade deals they've signed, and it is everything to do with its toxicity on the doorstep. It went down like a bucket of cold sick. We all know that. It was a huge part in why they did so badly in those local elections. It's why they lost Runcorn, a key by-election. They lost it by 6 votes. There's definitely 6 votes in winter fuel. And they had this mutiny of Labour MPs, which had started gathering momentum as their postbags got bigger with angry constituents fed up about it. So there was no way out, really. They had to dump it, and dump it they did. The interesting thing there, I think, is also, are we going to see more to come here? Because Keir Starmer's under massive pressure from a lot of his MPs, not just the left flank, but lots of them, to spell out more of what he's doing for Labour voters. So are you just in number 10 to kind of cut things and manage decline? What are you giving to your core supporters, your grassroots? They campaigned so hard on that 2-child benefit cap in opposition. Loads of their MPs want them to lift it now they're in power. Comes with a big price tag, but huge pressure for him to lift it. Is he going to or not? I think that would be a really one to watch.
Mikey?
Yeah, I think Kate's right. This was bound to happen at some point. I think a lot of people were telling them to do this pretty much from day one, because you can keep the policy and just change the thresholds for it. The thing I think we should come back to a little bit is that most pensioners who were in receipt of winter fuel payments didn't need them. You know, this is a benefit that not everyone needs. And was being paid to people who were using it, you know, for their, you know, Christmas wine box.
Mikey, did you just say that?
It was.
If you're on the front bench, you'd be number 10 would be texting you now.
Thank goodness I'm not. But the reality is that it was incredibly unpopular. That should have been clear from pretty much day one that it was going to be unpopular.
Pretty bold miscalculation.
It was, and I think it was quite naive that they thought they could make the argument that, you know, this wealthy pensioners are getting this, not everyone needs it, and for that to not. You know, for that to land. I think the problem they have now is, yes, they've done this, you could call it a screeching U-turn, but the thing you have to bear in mind is, yes, they're effectively committing money to reversing this, but every bit of money they use from the headroom to reverse something like this is money they can't spend on, as you say, reversing the two-child benefit cap. This is where the tough decisions come in.
Yeah. Although talking to Tom Bulban earlier on, he was very confident. Obviously, he's not going to share his sources with me, but we know, he's pretty well plugged in at the top of government, the phrase that he uses. When he says he's expecting a change of heart on that two-child benefit cap, I would put my shout on it now, Casey.
I mean, that's the number one ask from their MPs. I can't, on the top of my tongue, I can't remember the price tag. It's a few billion, isn't it? I think it might be 4 or 5 billion. It's more than winter fuel, which I think was about 1.4 all in. So it's going to be about whether or not they can make their sums add up. The thing is that we have to come back to is what is a Labour government saying it's there to do?
Yeah.
Traditionally, one of the things the Labour government has always said it will do is tackle child poverty. So this is where you get this big ask with the two-child benefit cap. It was one of the main reasons Rosie Duffield did that explosive resignation, if you remember, a few months back. It was also one of the main things Labour campaigned on in terms of expansion of welfare when they were in opposition. So, it's tough for them. I don't know if I bet my house on it, but I wouldn't bet I don't have a house. So, but anyway, I don't know if I bet my house on it yet. But, clearly they're under a lot of pressure to do this. On the pensioners thing as well, I would just gently remind my erstwhile colleague here from the Mirror that when it was the Labour Party general election campaign, one of the big things they did was campaign on how we have got pensioners' backs. And one of their key messages in that election, because they know pensioners vote, is you can't trust the Tories with your pension and benefits. Trust Labour. So not only is this go down badly on doorsteps, but it's it's kind of a bit of a betrayal of that key messaging that they did in general election.
Since last year.
It's pensioner benefits, Yes, I mean the triple lock still exists.
Yeah, there are even fewer pensioners who need the winter fuel allowance than there were last year.
I think Labour may be learning one of the basic lessons of politics, which is politics is about getting voters to like you and vote for you, and it's not just about redistributing other people's wealth to other people.
No.
All right, it's really great to get both of your thoughts on that big story here today. And if you're suffering at this moment in Pienaar and Friends from a sense of news overload, I make no apologies for that whatsoever. We've been watching live over the course of the last half hour and more events in the White House, where we've been seeing the most extraordinary dust-up involving the President of the United States and the President of South Africa, with Donald Trump in the face of Cyril Ramaphosa accusing South Africa and the South African government of responsibility for the deaths of thousands of white farmers and farmers' families. Genocide is the phrase that's being used by some closely linked to the president very much echoing that theme. It was, quite frankly, on the evidence that we've seen, an ambush of a kind which in what used to be a normal diplomatic world would have been pretty much unthinkable, and now becomes, well, not quite routine, but still something which comes along and comes and goes and leaves us all with our jaws hanging open. And if you guys, Mikey and Kate, will forgive me for my momentary distraction there, I have also been watching the live news feed from Israel, in Jerusalem, where the Israeli leader Benjamin Netanyahu has been giving, well, I won't call it a news conference. He's roaming a stage there, microphone in hand, and giving an update on the conflict in Gaza. From what I was watching and hearing there, he's pronouncing major success in the war in Gaza. He also had a word on Iran. We know that President Trump is, I hope you're keeping up with all of this, it's moving pretty quickly. President Trump is looking for some sort of agreement with Iran on their nuclear program, a peaceful resolution. We heard just a second ago, or saw, because I'm watching the subtitles, Benjamin Netanyahu saying, look, hope those talks make progress. Israel reserves the right to defend itself. So keeping open the possibility of Israel taking its own military action if Israel, are not satisfied with progress towards reducing and eliminating nuclear development in Tehran. More on all of those stories are coming in. I promise you missed nothing here with us on Times Radio on Pienaar and Friends. Now, though, let's get the news with Stuart Willey.
Across the UK, on DAB, online and on your smart speaker. This is Times Radio.
John, thank you. Good evening. There have been more angry scenes in the Oval Office as Donald Trump met with South African President Cyril Ramaphosa. After describing his guest as controversial, Mr. Trump displayed videos he claimed showed a white genocide. South Africa rejects the allegations. In a major climb down, the Prime Minister has confirmed he wants to make more people eligible for winter fuel payments. The decision last year to strip millions of pensioners of help towards their gas and electricity bills has been heavily criticised. Financial expert Martin Lewis told this programme it was a mistakenly rushed policy.
Certainly older pensioners tend to be in the house more often and have their heating on more. So it is a huge chunk of the available income if you're for people who are on just over £11,800.
A court's heard a couple felt they were being chased like terrorists as they pitched a tent on the South Downs during a national manhunt. Constance Martin and her partner Mark Gordon deny gross negligence manslaughter and causing or allowing the death of their baby. Footage has emerged showing diplomats in the West Bank fleeing as gunfire is heard. Israel's military says it fired warning shots, arguing a diplomatic delegation deviated from an approved route. In football, it's a chance for Manchester United or Tottenham to save their season tonight in Bilbao. They're fighting it out in the Europa League final, with the winnings claiming a spot in the Champions League next season. Hear the match live from 8 over on Talk Sport. For a roundup of the news on demand, find the Times News Briefing on the Times Radio app.
This is Times Radio.
Putting your employees in control of their financial future. Search NatWest Cushion to find out more.
Here with me on Pienaar and Friends, Mikey Smith from the Mirror, Kate Ferguson from the Sun on Sunday, and here's Kate Borsay, who takes over at 7 with no doubt a lot to share.
Look, one big story in town at the moment, John, will be continuing to react to the scenes in the White House, an absolute showdown there, a public dressing down that South African officials had feared. There was beef going into this, the accusation of genocide of white farmers, already in place from Donald Trump, endorsed by Elon Musk and also by his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. It has been widely discredited, but still Washington pressed on, giving a group of 59 white Afrikaners asylum in the US. That is, of course, in light of every other person being unable to claim asylum in the United States. We're going to do several different perspectives from it tonight as we seek the facts and we look at what the truth is and why Donald Trump would be so sure about this ambush. It is a big bee in his bonnet.
Yeah.
And
well, it wouldn't be the first time President Trump's gone off on a track entirely unsupported by facts or reason.
But this is a spectacular meltdown.
Sure. Well, as they frequently tend to be.
A carefully prepared video. It isn't even off the cuff, and you could argue that the Zelensky scenes were provoked and were off the cuff, and you know, maybe Zelensky should have done something a little more about it or should have stepped back. You know, this was a prepared ambush. So we'll be speaking to the Times' Katie Balls in Washington. We'll find out exactly a little more about the scene. I know that reporters and journalists were taken aback by that. The reaction in Washington. We'll also go to a journalist in South Africa as well. Where have these claims come from? Is there any basis in truth to them? And we'll follow this up with John Battersby, who's a South African politics expert, a bit later on in the show. You know, what was Ramaphosa meant to be there for? A trade deal. He's even brought along some famous golfers with him. It's all pretty embarrassing. We're also talking winter fuel as well. Brian Leishman, the Labour MP up in Scotland, has on our show this evening called for the reinstatement of winter fuel for pensioners to be universal and not to be means tested. So back for everyone, back to how it was, and he wants it to be immediate. Those are the calls that he is making. There's a good chat with him coming up as well. Adam Bolton's with us this evening. We'll go to David Charter, also in Washington. Just loads to discuss. It's going to be a very interesting evening.
You bet it is. Looking forward to your show, Kate. Right after this one, for about 20 minutes' time here on Times Radio. This is Pienaar and Friends. Mikey Smith from the Mirror here with me, and Kate Ferguson from the Sun on Sunday. Let's just go back and reprise what was just happening in the White House, if only because it may have been hard to believe the first time round. It started off a seemingly quite cordial Cyril Ramaphosa, the veteran leader of South Africa, sitting there next to Donald Trump. He had a gift.
Now, I brought you a really fantastic golf book. Weighs 14 kilograms.
Oh, that sounds good.
And it showcases the golf courses in our country.
Well, the South African leader was, as far as he was concerned, there in Washington, D.C. at the White House to reset relations.
It's a real joy, and I'd also like to thank you for allowing your people to start discussions with us at the trade level. I mean, we are essentially here to reset the relationship between the United States and South Africa.
And then President Trump was asked about why white South Africans were being granted asylum. Ramaphosa interjected.
It will take President Trump to listen to them. I'm not going to be repeating what I've been saying. I would say if there was Afrikaner farmer genocide, I can bet you these three gentlemen would not be here, including my Minister of Agriculture. He would not be with me. So it'll take him, President Trump, listening to their stories, to their perspective. That is the answer to your question.
And then this.
It has to be responded to.
Yeah, sure.
Let me see the articles, please, if you would. And turn the lights down.
This was played then.
Never be scared to kill a revolution. Demand that at some point there must be killing, because the killing is part of a revolutionary act.
Some video clips there from South Africa. President Trump went through some documents.
These are articles over the last few days. Death of people. Death. Horrible death. Death. I don't know. To pick anyone. White South Africans are fleeing because of the violence and racist laws.
Cyril Ramaphosa took an opportunity to respond.
That is not government policy. We have a multi-party democracy in South Africa that allows people to express themselves, political parties to adhere to various policies, and in many cases, or in some cases, those policies do not go along with government policy. Our government policy is completely against what he was saying, even in the parliament. And they're a small minority party, which is allowed to exist in terms of our constitution.
But you do allow them to take land.
No.
You do allow them to take land.
Nobody can take land.
And then when they take the land, they kill the white farmer. And when they kill the white farmer, nothing happens to them.
No,
nothing happens to them.
There is criminality in our country. People who do get killed, unfortunately, through criminal activity, are not only white people. Majority of them are black people. And we have now been utilized.
The farmers are not black. I don't say that's good or bad, but the farmers are not black. And the people that are being killed in large numbers.
President Trump then blamed the media.
If the news wasn't fake, like NBC, which is fake news, totally, one of the worst, ABC, NBC, CBS, horrible. But if they weren't fake news like this jerk that we have here, if we had real reporters, they'd be covering it. But the fake news in this country doesn't talk about that. They don't want to talk about it, but now they have to talk about it. But they won't. This won't even be a subject. They'll have him talking about why did a country give a free, think of this, why did a country give an airplane to the United States Air Force?
Well, Donald Trump was asked if what was happening in South Africa could be considered genocide.
Well, I haven't made up my mind. I hate to see it from the standpoint of South Africa, but also, I'm trying to save lives. I'm working with Russia and Ukraine. I don't have to do that. It's not our war. It was started by other people. It was helped along by our past administration. It would have never happened if I were president, but I'm trying to save lives, no matter where. Rwanda, I have nothing to do with Rwanda and the Congo, but I felt I had a very talented person in this administration, and I sent him there, and he did an unbelievable job, I think. I mean, we're going to find out, but he's done the hardest part of the job. It should happen. If I can save lives, I want to save the lives. If it's in Africa, that's great. If it's in Europe, if it's wherever it may be.
Well, there was a lot more of the same. I hope you get a sense of what was going on. Well, we consulted Tim Marshall, who's a respected foreign correspondent, the author of Prisoners of Geography, just for something of a fact check.
Are white South African farmers being targeted and killed? Occasionally, yes. Is it a government policy? Absolutely not. Is it endemic? No. About 50 farmers are killed every year in South Africa, but remember, South Africa's murder rate easily tops the 20, maybe even 30,000 a year. And it's pretty obvious that farmers will be amongst them, including black farmers. And the last thing I noticed on the video, showing all these thousands of white crosses on a hillside. The one thing that did trouble me was that Ramaphosa said, where's that? I'm not familiar with that. Is that in South Africa? That struck me as odd, given that it's a cause célèbre in South Africa. It's on the N1 road route. It's up on a hillside. There's about 3,000 crosses to symbolise what one side of this argument claims is this genocide against white farmers. But the crosses, the 3,000 white metal crosses, have been planted there between now and round about 2000. So we're talking a quarter of a century.
It's the foreign affairs specialist there, Tim Marshall. And if you take Tim Marshall's analysis and fact finding seriously, and I can tell you that I do over a number of years, it would then follow that President Trump's the basis, the substance of what he had to say in that remarkable outburst cannot be taken seriously. But what we have been witnessing was a very serious matter, wasn't it, in terms of just an event in world diplomacy, Kate?
Yeah, it's unbelievable, really. I think you used the word jaw-dropping earlier, which is almost an underestimate. You see there the South African president going in and trying to do everything we've learned that you should do with Trump, with the playbook: flatter him, come bearing gifts, thank America for their help, really try and hug Trump close. But no chance. That was all orchestrated, planned. The lights were dimmed. He was ambushed with these so-called kind of evidence of a genocide of white farmers in South Africa, one that we just heard Tim Marshall rebut using his immense knowledge and facts. And we've seen now the White House Twitter account, putting out information and putting out kind of putting out social media posts to go hand in hand with that ambush. What
sort of things are they saying?
They're kind of sorry, I've got it on my inbox here, but they're tweeting things, talking about like screen grabs of the video, saying this has just been shown in the Oval Office. So you can see that this was all prepared, orchestrated, ready to go with the tweets. So it's an obvious thing to say, really, but it gives you a sense of how orchestrated today was.
Mikey,
I mean, the startling thing to me is how unprepared Cyril Ramaphosa seemed to be during this thing. Sure, maybe he's there. I keep asking myself, why is he there? Sure, maybe he's there to try and negotiate a trade deal, but I mean, Trump put a 30% tariff on South Africa, which is not even the highest tariff rate in Africa, let alone in the world. Why would he be invited to a sit down? It seems really obviously a trap. And if something, maybe he has to do that, sure, because of the tariffs.
Okay.
But if you're walking into something that you know is a trap, you come tooled up. You come with responses to what are obviously going to be his arguments. He watched the video of the crosses on the hillside, and he said, "Where's that? Is that where is that? And Trump had to say that's in South Africa, which is bizarre, really. That you would, it feels like he's turned up to a drag race in a push bike. It especially in the wake of what happened to Zelensky, which there was really no warning for, and there should have been, but no one really expected it. He must have expected this. And it's bizarre that he didn't come prepared. All right, we're gonna leave that there for the moment. Kate Borsa is going to take over at 7 with more discussion of these scenes and what we have been seeing. We're going to bring our conversation back home to British politics in just a moment and hear from one of our favourite pollsters and what he thinks about the policy moves we've seen today. And if we've got time, let's try and make time for some other big questions. Is the Tory party, has it got any kind of future at all? Let's talk about that. This is Pienaar and Friends on Times Radio, an associate.
Digital radio on the free Times Radio app and via your smart speaker. John Pienaar at Drive on Times Radio.
And here with me on Pienaar and Friends, Mikey Smith from the Mirror and Kate Ferguson from the Sun on Sunday. And we're now joined by Luke Trill, one of our favourite pollsters, the director of More in Common. Hello to you, Luke.
Good evening.
Look, we've been talking the hind legs off a donkey today about what we think about the Prime Minister's screeching U-turn. What we're all wondering now is, what do people out there think? What does the public think? And there's no one better to talk to you about what the public may be thinking and is thinking than you, Luke. So I'm going to start this. We all want to have a chat and get a piece of you on this subject. But this question of this U-turn on winter fuel allowances, first of all, how big a problem has it been? We know it's a big problem and has been. How big one? Can you quantify it?
I think it's been a huge problem for the government. It is rare that we do a focus group on attitudes to the government or politics where winter fuel doesn't come up as a complaint. And if you look at it relative to other things that the government has done, it is the policy with both the highest cut through with the public and the highest negativity. I've taken to describing it as this government's original sin. And I think if they hadn't done something on it, we'd have been looking at an impact on a par with the Liberal Democrats in coalition, what happened with them on tuition fees. It was really that bad. Yeah. There was real hostility and vitriol from the public on it.
Yeah, and that suggestion of a betrayal over tuition fee policy hung around the necks of the Liberal Democrats for literally years and ran through to the following election after these years in coalition. Katie, what are you thinking? We've got Luke in front of us.
Luke, is it enough to just take some out? Like, does it, this tweaking of the threshold, people are often quite nervous about that. They just need to junk it wholesale, or what would just, I don't know, giving it back to half those who are eligible. Will that be enough?
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem very definitely has been the threshold, right? You can get people on the fact that multimillionaires shouldn't be getting the winter fuel, but having it as low as 12,000, you had a lot of people who basically said, look, I've worked all my life, I'm just above the threshold. It seems really unfair that I'm having it withdrawn. So I think they can do it through the threshold, but they've got to get it right. And of course, there are all sorts of complications in terms of how you do that as well. It may turn out to be more cost effective just to junk the whole thing.
Yeah.
Mikey.
Like the voters who took very, very badly against this, which seems like most voters, how many of them are like gone, and how many of them do you think are likely to forgive Labour in light of the U-turn?
Well, so we dug into this when there were first rumours that there was going to be a U-turn. It was interesting. We found that a clear majority said they would think better of the government for junking it. But interestingly, Labour switchers, those who voted for the party in 2024 and now say they wouldn't vote for Labour, were even more likely. It was around 2/3 said they would think better of the government and would be more likely to see the government as strong than weak. And I think there's sometimes a bit of a perception in Westminster that U-turns, really annoy the public. They really don't. Like, the public like unpopular policies being junked. Obviously, there are other issues in terms of will backbench MPs think everything is U-turnable. But with the public, they're just happy to junk this stuff.
Well, that'll be their hope. And you're nodding, Kate. It makes a certain amount of sense.
Yeah, totally. I also want to really ask one other thing, Luke, if that's all right. How damaging do you think this is for Rachel and her brand? Like, she leaned into this cut heavily at the beginning as part of her Iron Chancellor branding. But how much of a busted flush is Rachel because of this policy?
Well, the really interesting thing that we found is that Rachel Reeves is in danger of becoming the unpopular face of this government. So whilst Keir Starmer's approval ratings tracked hers until the start of this year and the Ukraine crisis emerged and Keir's ticked up a bit, hers have continued to fall downwards. And I think there is a risk for her that, she used this tough language. It landed quite badly with the public, who said, God, we've had, since the financial crash of tough choices language, we want the positive stuff now. And then having to U-turn on it, I think it does place her in a more difficult position.
Right. Well, while we got you here, Luke, we've only got a few minutes before the end of the programme. I don't know if you read the Times leader, I'm sure you do, being a well-read individual, which talks about the Conservative Party being led backwards by Kemi Badenoch, which leads to the inevitable conversation. Is the Tory party heading for oblivion? And I realise we can't answer that question definitively. I spoke to Anthony Selden. He put the chances of a death event for the Tory party at maybe 1 in 3. And from Anthony Selden, that's a rather chilling thought. I mean, what's your analysis on that question, first of all?
Yeah, well, there's no doubt the Conservatives are in a very bad position. There was a poll from YouGov yesterday, which had them behind the Liberal Democrats. Our poll today had them on just 21%, slipping backwards even from that terrible general election result. And the truth is, and I think this has been a bit missed, is because voters are so much more volatile than they used to be, they don't have the traditional loyalties. It's no longer enough just to assume that loyal Tories will always vote Tory, particularly if there's another party they can go to. And I think the challenge for Kemi Badenoch is it's not that she's necessarily unpopular. In fact, when we play clips in focus groups of her, people say, I quite like that. She's different to normal Tories. The problem is it's the first time they've seen the clip of her. She's not cutting through. And when you've got Reform making such big gains, the Tory party needs to have an alternative offer that cuts through. And at the moment, people aren't seeing it. So I think it's really dire. And it would not surprise me if the Conservative Party did disappear or went the way of the Republicans in France, who've become a tiny force, or, the flip side of electoral volatility is they could recover. It's, we're in uncharted territory here.
Yeah, Mikey.
I was just going to ask if the answer to the Tories' woes is not Kemi Badenoch, then who do you get the sense it might be? Is there anyone who can save them from oblivion?
Well, look, so we polled, Robert Jenrick is often seen as an alternative. And when we put his name in a hypothetical poll, it didn't move the dial at all. The one politician who did, and this won't surprise listeners, I don't think, was Boris Johnson, who turned a Conservative deficit into a Conservative lead. Now, he's got his own problems and I think would struggle with some of those Lib Dem facing seats in the south of England. But there's no doubt that when you do focus groups in the Red Wall, there's still a residual sympathy for him. So I think the Tories, even if it's not back as leader, might have to find a way to use Boris Johnson more.
Yeah, Kate, you're smiling.
I'm nodding in agreement with you, Luke, because I think we're going to go back into this are we saying bring Boris back territory? Because Nigel Farage is such a big, charismatic personality, and you need someone to cut through, don't you? And I bumped into this Tory former cabinet big beast yesterday, and he said to me, I don't think Kemi's got long to last. He said, if we were this bad in the polls, but she was doing stuff, we might cut her some slack. But it's that not cutting through, as you say, with the focus groups. She's just not doing anything. And that will be, I think, what kills her.
Yeah, I mean, the conventional wisdom, Mikey, has been that, look, she's got until next May's local elections. I wonder, does she?
That seems like a very long time to me. She doesn't seem to be getting any better. She doesn't seem to be clawing back any territory.
Yeah,
I think that would be a long time.
Okay, well, you can hear the clock ticking. Luke Trill, as always, great to hear from you. Mikey and Kate, always a joy. Thank you to you for listening. Our producer was Ollie Cole. Robin Warren was our technical operator. And as promised, Kate's up next with quite a few batons to pick up and run with from here on in On Times Radio. I'm John Pienaar.
Across the UK, on DAB digital radio, online and on your smart speaker. This is Times Radio, the voice of the Times.
Thanks, John. Have a great evening. It is 7 o'clock. It's Kate Borsay and the Evening Edition. Coming up.
These are articles over the last few days. Death, horrible death. White South Africans are fleeing because of the violence and racist laws.
Donald Trump has ambushed the South African President Cyril Ramaphosa at the Oval Office during an extraordinary